Good morning. We're just doing an audio check. Johanna, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, and so Granicus can get started if it's not already.
Yeah, I started it like 2 minutes ago.
Great. Okay, terrific. And Matthew, you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you well. So are you going to be running the video from your Sam Houston profile? If so, I've tried to promote you to panelist, just so you're aware.
Let's see, what does he have me here? Let me look. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay.
So Jake, are you here as well?
Yes, Sam, I'm here.
Okay, so camera 2 is not appearing in the Sam Houston profile, even though that's selected.
Okay, let me try mine to see if mine is working.
And it does appear to be selected in the NDI video profile. Jake is checking to see why one of the cameras is not showing up.
Johanna, checking in with you to make sure you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
Great, thank you.
So Jake, it does appear to be working on your profile, but it doesn't appear to be working on the Sam Houston profile. So, Matthew, I think what we need to do is just keep using the Jake's profile so that we can start the meeting on time.
Okay, thanks.
Chair Sabatier, can you check your microphone for me?
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Okay, so with Legistar running, I think we are live and ready to go when you are, Chair Sabatier.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for your patience. It is 9:03 a.m. Today is Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. This is the regular meeting for the Board of Supervisors for the County of Lake. We will begin this with a moment of silence. Do any of our supervisors have one? And we have Supervisor Crandall and Supervisor Paiska.
You go first.
So I would like to dedicate this moment of silence to the families of our two residents who lost their lives to COVID-19 this week, and the families who are struggling with their loved ones who are out of the county and in ICUs and all over the region.
I'd like to dedicate a moment of silence to all the families that lost family members in Afghanistan, considering what's just taken place, and just wanted to, have them in our thoughts.
Do we have anything on at the board today? Okay.
Supervisor Simon, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 4. Are there any extra items that are not currently on the agenda that supervisors would like to add? And nothing from staff as well? Okay, moving forward, approval of the consent agenda. Any items from the consent agenda that supervisors wish to pull for further discussion? And anything from staff from the consent agenda that you wish to pull? I don't believe I received any email. Let's open it up to the public. Any items from the consent agenda that you wish to pull for further discussion? And if you are in the Zoom room, please raise your hand and we will call on you by pressing the button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, or if you are calling via telephone, dial *9. And seeing none, let's go ahead and bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the consent agenda items number 5.1 through 5.18.
I'll second.
Motion by Supervisor Simon, second by Supervisor Crandall. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott. Aye. Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 6.1, or 9:05 a.m. item, public input. If you have any expression on anything that is not on our agenda today, then you have 3 minutes. And if you want to step up to the microphone in the boardroom or raise your hand if you are in the Zoom room, we'll go ahead and start in the boardroom today. And again, you have 3 minutes, and please give us your name.
Good morning. My name is Siva Jamali, and I know you've seen me before, but I am coming with a scenario for you with some facts that we actually have gotten from our political guys, so we know it's legal. It's not something we just come up with. They researched it. I don't know how to say that, so I'm sorry, I probably didn't say it right. But as you know, we are in bargaining with you guys for a contract. And the amount of money that we were asking for, the county share is going to be $475,740. Now that sounds like a lot of money. And granted, I know we are the poorest county in the state of California. That's hands down. But here's the thing. We have over 1,800, maybe 2,000 now, providers. And imagine if all of us were given $1 more an hour in our wages to use in Lake County. That is a profit that we can't afford to keep losing. It is a true, and it's going to happen. I don't have time to go out of county to pay my, buy my groceries and, go to Ukiah and go to Costco and I buy all my groceries here in Lake County. If it's not at Safeway, I buy it at Walmart. If it's not at Walmart, I go to IGA. So I'm spending all that money that I'm getting on my contract and from my wages here. So it stands to reason to me that if 2,000 providers were given a livable wage and we were allowed to use it where we would, which would be here, we could help our own county come out of being the poorest county. Now, there's something else that I wanted to mention this morning. When we go to work every day, we go by hours and how many hours we get paid. That's how our salary comes out. But what you guys don't know is that each day we go to work, we stand a chance of not having a job. Why? Our client goes into the hospital. Our client goes into a retirement home. My son passed away on June 24th. 56 hours of my income. While it's a bad thing to mention money when I'm mentioning a true loved one that I lost, but he's only 44 and I lost him. 56 hours of my income is gone. That's a big chunk. If I was getting a livable wage, I wouldn't have to worry about it. So I have to go out and get more hours to replace that. And that's why you have providers who mention they have more than one client. Because one client sometimes isn't enough hours for us to survive. So I'm just hoping that when you hear the numbers, that you don't think about the large number that you're spending, but that you will think about the large number that you will be receiving in our economy. And I think my 3 minutes is probably up.
Good ears.
But thank you for listening. And I know you guys are tired of hearing enough from me, so let's get that contract done. And then you won't have to hear from me anymore.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments from the boardroom? Please come up to the microphone.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Fred D'Amico, and I represent my clients of 14320 Noble Ranch Road. This might not be in some of your districts, but what's going on in Lower Lake County, Lake County right now is very, very serious. What happened was the supervisors passed an ordinance in 2018 that if you have 20 acres, you could have commercial cultivation. Just so happens in the same exact year that Richard Ford went ahead and used a GIS program from the county, which cannot be used for acreage, yet he did. And he used it because he just needed some internal data that he said he did not have for a lot of your parcels in the county, 65,000 parcels. He said there was roughly 15,000 parcels that had data, but they wanted to populate just for their own idea what the valuation would be of this land. When they did a GIS overlay of your entire county, that's great to get your rough idea, but what he did then was he took all those what we call Mickey Mouse numbers, because you cannot have GIS numbers looked at in any serious fashion whatsoever. It might be an approximation, but it is by no means supposed to be used to determine somebody's acreage. And when I say this, I mean it's off by a couple acres here and there. Some people actually gain 2 acres, 2.5 acres of land. My horse barn's on your property line. I just gained 2 acres, or you gained it. What happens to my horse barn? You're going to cause so many problems by this GIS overlay, which moves your parcel lines and moves your boundaries. And what's happened with this is that you guys passed a law about 20 acres. So when we show up to the counter at the planning department, it says 19.6 or 19.1, oh, we get denied. Except for 20 years since we bought the property, we paid on 20 acres, and it's been 20 acres on record inside the tax assessor's data, which, by the way, somebody at this county, thank God, sent me a screenshot showing me the proof of 20. I said, that's funny, because when you go to 19, it shows 19.16 now. I said, I don't remember a sinkhole or an earthquake taking land away up here. So how's it possible that we lost land? Well, you didn't really lose it. What Richard did was he took the data that was good data, and he got rid of it. He erased it. And he overwritten it with this magical, imaginary number, which we call Mickey Mouse number, which is GIS. We've had lawyers look into it. You cannot, in your website, you cannot use GIS for acreage. Yet, somehow Richard is saying, well, this is just an approximation. Go get a survey or a lot line adjustment, and we'll change that number back. Well, Richard did not use a survey to change the number in the first place. He just did a GIS and changed the numbers. These numbers have existed when we bought the property? 20 acres. What we're asking for now is to go back in time just to 2018 for the past 10 years that we've all paid on 20 acres as well, taxes. The valuation for the State Board of Equalization of California has said to me, you ask the county this, how much money is the county going to make if they grant them the 20 acres, which they've already had, so they could get commercial cultivation? It's not that they want to do the cultivation themselves.
And your
but-
3 minutes are up if you can get to your final
Yep.
point.
We'd like to sell the property, and it would be sell for an extra $700,000 versus what we could sell for without the license. That $700,000 difference is a big difference to the county, which equates to at least 2 sheriff's cars in 10 years. And if there's 20 of us, that's $1.6 million to the, I guess, the poorest county in the state.
And again, your 3 minutes are up if you could just do your final statement.
The final statement is what we're doing is we're going to propose to the county to please look at this seriously enough that our situation shows we've had 20 acres. We'd like to not get what's called a variance, but a exception, exemption, whatever you want to call it, based on the facts that this land has had 20, and knowing what Richard did.
Sir, your
Thank you.
3 minutes
We
are
look
up.
forward to talking to you more in the future and bringing this to a light and resolving this for the county so you can have true economic development as well as miss the future problems that will come by this. Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments in the boardroom before we move on to the Zoom room?
Good morning, all. Again, my name is Luisa Acosta, and I just want to let you know that we're not here to cause any issues among the county, among anybody. We are here to be visible. We have done some research, and we have done the research, and we know the math. We are asking the board members to do the right thing. This is something that you have the power to change. And when you invest in your community, we all win. And you will know that this is a fact. I'm asking you to put your right hand in your heart when the time comes to decide what you're going to give our workers. Keep in mind that today is them, and tomorrow will be somebody else, maybe a grandchild, one of your own kid, taking care of you. So please consider that and think about it. I thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments in the boardroom?
My name is Diana Williard, and I am a provider in Lake County. And just the same thing, just asking you guys to do the right thing. Jessica, you came to one of our meetings, and I felt like you felt us, heard us, understood what we were saying. So just taking that same consideration, maybe remembering some of the things that we shared with you that night, just to do the right thing and support this. Let's be a county that takes care of their disabled, their sick, their elderly. And thank you for your guys' time.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments in the boardroom? Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Fernando Arroyo. I'm with 14320 Noble Branch Road. And all I'm asking is for you guys to, figure out a way to get us our 20 acres back so we can, we can sell it, get out from under it. The family members, my brother had just passed away 2 months ago, and the family members do want to sell it, and that's what we're asking for, just get our 20 acres back. And like Mr. D'Amico said, if you give us that 20 acres, you guys make money, enough money to where you can fund your police departments, your fire departments, and your caregivers. They can get a raise because you can make up within 10 years up to over $1 million plus just by saying, yeah, you got your 20 acres, you can do what you got to do with it, and you guys can make money. And that's all we're asking for. We're not asking for anything else. We're just asking just give us our 20 acres like everybody else is asking. And I'm quite sure there should have been a lot more people here asking for the same thing, but we don't understand what they're afraid of. You know, if they're, you know, afraid to give, something might happen different, or something like repercussions of some sort, or what. But we had talked to a lot of people, and they said that the same things are happening to them. But this would help out the county itself by, you know, getting all this extra money. And that's what sounds to me like the caregivers want and everybody else wants, is just to help out the county. And that would help out a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Last check in the boardroom. Any further comments before we move on to the Zoom room? All right, let's go to the Zoom room. I see phone 4627, if we can please unmute. And please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. This is Tom Slade. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring something up as a disclosure. It's been brought up before, but because of all the COVID and masking hysteria, first of all, I'm not a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice. I don't mean this. I just want to raise this issue, bring it up once again, that there's plenty of information available that according to doctors, I don't know, but sounds like it to me, that there are treatments and preventatives such as hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and others. And I just wanted to bring this out because I don't know what is the situation in Lake County, because on the updates, COVID updates I've listened to, I haven't heard anything about that. And it seemed like something, you know, that it would be extremely important because apparently these treatments are very effective. And so I just want to bring that to your attention to disclose this information one more time. So thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you for your comment. Next is phone 1113. And again, please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, hi. This is Will Tuttle, and this is regarding the COVID response. So we've been witnessing for many weeks the Lake County health officials and the Board of Supervisors conspiring to use propaganda, bribes, and coercion to compel county residents to submit to medical experimentation, which is in direct violation of the Nuremberg Code of Ethics and of the right to fully informed consent. This is all on video. You've been all consistently refusing to look at the masses of compelling evidence that documents the over 500,000 vaccine injuries and deaths now in the United States, the available alternative treatments like we just heard about, devastating deceit of the official narrative. What's going on? Have you all been bought off? What is your motivation in refusing to protect people from exploitation and tyranny? Let's follow the money, shall we? Last week, Dr. Bloom informed us that he is not taking any money from Pfizer or the other drug companies. However, this is absolutely not true. At a deeper level, it becomes obvious that his entire salary is only coming to him because he is willing to unquestioningly support Big Pharma's narrative. Big Pharma has captured the AMA, the medical school training process, the CDC, and the government. So he's guaranteed to have plenty of esteem and money as long as he goes along, and if he questioned it for one moment, he would be out of a job. The Federation of State Medical Boards now has a policy that any health official who questions the COVID narrative will lose their license. So Drs. Pace, Bloom, and Evans, and all the doctors and nurses, everyone is in a pharma-controlled payoff prison of deception that they cannot question or challenge, and they know that. These people typically have few other life skills and would be reduced to working menial jobs if they lost their license, and that's understandably terrifying to them. And the same thing is true of the county supervisors. If you supervisors publicly questioned this narrative, you would be immediately attacked by the media, by the Lake County Record B, and your political future would be destroyed. The same thing is also true of the reporters and the editors of the Record B and all the mainstream media, because the largest advertisers are the wealthy and powerful interests that are supporting the lockdowns, the inoculations, and the destruction of economic and political freedom. And so the media, the government agencies, the medical industry, the local and state politicians are all taking money from Big Pharma, either directly or indirectly, and are paid off. In the case of what happened in Nazi Germany, of course, we had the United States Army that kind of rode in on white horses and freed the people, and those who perpetrated the violence and injustice were held to account. Many of them went to jail, and the leaders were killed for their crimes against humanity. Whether this will happen eventually in this case, it's hard to say. But for sure, we all leave our bodies at some point, and at that point, we will be held to account for what we've done in our lifetimes, and if we were egocentric and harmful and cowardly, or if we did our best to be kind to others and to protect the vulnerable. So this is something to be very aware of. If we follow the money, where does it lead in the big picture? Ultimately, we can never escape accountability for our actions. As the Bible says, God is not mocked. Whatever seeds we sow, that shall we also reap. Truth will always triumph in the end. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Jennifer Denham.
Good morning, Supervisors. First, I would like to say that I highly respect you for putting up with 3 minutes of Mr. Tuttle every week. In other words, I'm here representing SEIU 2015, and I wanted to give a different perspective than SEBA did. My son has autism and epilepsy. He's 23 years old, and I literally work 24/7. But I only get paid for 283 hours a month, which is the maximum amount of hours allowed. Additional money would make the additional hours that I work worth it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Next is phone 6205.
Good morning. This is Bart Levinson. I want to actually ask a question I know you can't answer, but it seems that there's no COVID update today, and is there one going to be, because we're in such an elevated case situation, it seems urgent to keep that happening every week at the Board of Supervisors. Second, IHHS workers, I don't have any association with them, but I am a person who might someday need their services, as are all of us. And I've listened to their presentations to the Board of Supervisors for a couple of months now, and just from a public point of view, I can't understand why what they're asking for is so difficult to grant, because it involves caring for, from my perspective, the entire community. We all share one thing. One day we will be unwell and die, and we don't know who among us is going to need additional care. And it's this workforce that is trained to do that. And so I want this workforce cared for and supported, healthy and in place in Lake County for all of us as we age and might one day need care ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'll answer the first part of it. It was requested to have a COVID-19 update, and it's my fault. I made a mistake when reviewing the agenda. It was not on there, and I did not recognize that it was not on there, but it will be there next week. Next is phone 6478. And again, please provide your name and 3 minutes.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Madeline, and I like to.
Can we get your last name, Madeline?
Bueller.
Thank you.
And I like to speak about these very precious comments, how you call them. They're very elaborate, and about the COVID, all the different medicines, the hydroxychloroquine and all the other ones, and all about also the money where it goes. Like it's all about money and power, the whole pandemic. And so I feel like you deny it afterwards and have the last word. and everything which is said, which isn't on your side, will just be denied, and then when you have the last word, the person who gave the presentation doesn't have an occasion to actually say something. I think this isn't correct, and this has to be changed. So I really ask for this to be changed, that the person who prepares so well to give the comment doesn't have an opportunity to answer to what you're saying. So this is my thing for this week. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next is Ahava Rose. Again, make sure that you let us know your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning, supervisors. Thanks for having me again. Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you can give us your name.
Okay, good morning. Ahava Rose. Thank you again for getting together. I don't really have all of the health codes and violations of California's government codes in front of me right now, but that's a past thing that we've discussed and will be discussing more in the future. Today, I just wanted to give you the opportunity vocally to consider that you don't have, being that you don't have a official public health officer registered or able to name right now, but that the ones that have appeared, the only ones that have appeared, have mentioned things like lining our public up for experimental poisonous injections and, you know, wearing a cloth on their face that harbors bacteria all day. I would like you to consider maybe a public health officer that would mandate things like 15 to 20 minutes of breath work and meditation every day, 15 to 20 minutes of exercise, maintaining a diet of pesticide-free, whole food, plant-based food, good water. You know, I'm not an allopathic doctor. I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor. My parents are in the allopathic, in the Western medicine. They're a labor and delivery nurse and a registered emergency ER doctor and vascular surgeon. Yeah, my parents are wonderful people, though, and you know, as most people are in the medical industry. But I chose to go a different way because I saw how, you know, they would come home telling me stories of getting bribes from pharmaceutical representatives. So it's not like this is something unknown to me. And if I were your chief public health officer, what I would do is recommend these things. In addition to anyone who wants to stay healthy, having 10,000 units of vitamin C every day, 400 international units of vitamin D, and anyone that was at a serious risk have a lot of have zinc on hand and a stash of ivermectin, which, being the poorest county in the state, cost pennies on the dollar. So I think I really do want to encourage you to look into that personally and look into maybe getting a public health officer who would allow these things in our hospitals and get patients treated with high-dose vitamin C if they were to get sick, and an infusion of that and hydroxychloroquine, which have been shown to get patients out of the hospital in sometimes the very same day. So that's all I have to say, and if you don't do these things, I will be back to put you on notice for violating several codes that breach the peace of our county. Having all this hysteria and, you know, conspiring to coerce people to line up for medical experiments that are linked to myocarditis.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Next comment, phone 2689.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Christina, and I'm not a healthcare.
What is your last name, Christina?
Christina Robertson.
Thank you.
I advocate for the healthcare workers to receive their living wage that they're asking for. Yes, but my other important message that I want to reiterate from last week, and that is to urge you to really look at what is happening with the COVID-19 situation. I promise you, it is a smoke screen for something much much worse, much more threatening. If I told you that there is a plan in place to move the unvaccinated, if needed, if need be, it's not happening now, but if I told you there's a plan in place to move the unvaccinated to camps called green camps, would that sound like conspiracy theory to you? Well, it would have to me before I started seriously investigating and looking at alternative information, not the information that is paid for, not the information that has money behind it, and where they tell these journalists and investigators what to investigate and how far they can go with that investigation, and what they want you to think is happening. So, yes, it does sound like a conspiracy theory, green camps. Look on the CDC website, and in the search bar, type in green camps. I'd like to know what you think of this. And that's where the suggestion of a former speaker would come in handy. When we make a comment, what do you have to say about it? Green camps. Search that. On the CDC website. Is this what you want your country to be? We've had citizens placed in camps before, Japanese citizens, during World War II. I really believe we're at a crucial point. And yes, I want people to be healthy. It's important, and some of the suggestions made are very helpful. If people would turn to creating health instead of going with the mass hysteria, as one person put it.
And your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I will agree with you that if you go to the CDC website, you will find that information. What makes it a conspiracy theory is to believe it will happen. I'm still looking for the FEMA camps that were supposed to happen years ago. Never happened. The government has a lot of things they research to look into. There's a lot of war games that are played that we don't know about unless we do some research. There's a lot of other things that they research into. It's the idea of what actually gets put into action. To theorize that things that are researched are automatically going to become reality, that's where it becomes conspiracy. Just want to make sure that people are aware that these things are not real. Any further comment from the board chambers, just to check in again? And then
Supervisor Sabate, if I could just point out something, week after week we sit here and hear the belittling and the derogatory comments, and I just want to point out observation that Socrates let us know about, that the debate is lost when slander becomes the tool of the loser.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Scott. We do have a hand, last one, and then we'll go ahead and close public comment. Julia. And if you could please provide your full name. And again, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. My name is Julia Bono. I have a scientific background, and I have researched nutritional healing for over 20 years with particular expertise in the health benefits of raw plant-based diets. I wish to speak to the board today about their responsibility to promote an important preventative measure for moderate to severe COVID-19 cases that anyone can implement at home. Numerous studies have shown that coronaviruses are notably pH sensitive, typically being deactivated at higher alkaline pH levels. Alkalizing pH changes can quickly be affected in humans by following a raw plant-based diet where only uncooked plant-derived foods are consumed, since cooked and high-protein foods have a notably acidifying effect on the human body. Individuals can also use inexpensive alkalizing agents like sodium bicarbonate, aka baking soda, administered orally at home or intravenously under medical supervision to change their body's pH levels. Importantly, a recent study entitled Plant-Based Diets, Pescatarian Diets, and COVID-19 Severity, a population-based case control study in 6 countries, showed that those following acidifying low-carbohydrate, high-protein diets were 5.5 times more likely than those following alkalizing plant-based diets to suffer moderate to severe COVID-19 symptoms. The research concluded that a plant-based dietary pattern may therefore be considered for protection against moderate to severe COVID-19. Thank you, Board. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comment. And that will finish up our public comment as I close that upon seeing the hand of Julia. And we will move on to our 9:06 a.m. item, presentation on SB 1383, Reducing Short-Lived Climate Pollutants in California. And Director Ewing, you are here with us. Good morning.
All right, good morning, Board. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director. Appreciate the time to give what I hope to be a brief presentation on SB 1383 to update the Board, inform the Board, and update the Board and the public on actions that the county is taking. So I do have a presentation, and if your Board will indulge me, I'll share my screen.
Please.
Okay, so SB 1383 was the Senate bill that was passed in actually 2016, and it is what is shown on the screen here, reducing short-lived climate pollutants in California. I'm going to go through a presentation that is modified. I modified it for the Board of Supervisors. It was provided by CalRecycle to the RCRC, Environmental Services Joint Powers Authority. The modifications are for the specific components of the regulations that do apply to Lake County. So SB 1383, the intent with 1383 in reducing short-lived climate pollutants as it relates to the solid waste industry and essentially for all the CalRecycle components is reducing organic waste from the waste stream. This slide here, and I also want to indicate that this presentation was provided to the Solid Waste Task Force, the County Solid Waste Task Force, and so we're just making sure that everyone is aware. But this slide here shows what is organic waste. Organic waste is more than just food waste, paper products, lumber, paper waste. There's a whole gamut of components to organic. But the intent is to reduce from the waste stream, reduce organics. Another component of 1383 is what is shown on the right side of this screen, and that is eliminating or reducing from the waste stream food that could otherwise have been eaten. So we're looking at providing about 20%, and the next screen shows some of the goals, and I'll jump ahead. At the bottom here, we talk about the 20% recovery of food that is currently edible but disposed right now. So the goals here that 1383 establishes, the regulations, first off, the regulations for 1383 were not finalized until the end of calendar year 2020. Within 1383, there was a goal to reduce by 50% the amount of organic waste that is landfilled. So the regulations came into effect at the end of 2020, and we were already to the point where we were supposed to have been statewide reducing by 50% the amount of waste going into the waste stream. Next year, the regulations go into effect, and then come 2025, there's another goal of a 75% reduction in landfill organic waste. I think it's important to note here that the percentages that we're talking about here is established based on a 2014 baseline. So what were the figures in 2014? We need to be at 50%, or needed to be at 50%, and then ultimately 75% in 2025. And then also that 20% recovery of currently disposed edible food goes into effect in 2025. Now, the impact to the local jurisdictions, to the county and the cities, which is really why we're here, they're significant. And going through some of them here, these slides that CalRecycle prepared on the, starting from left to right, we see organic waste collection, organic services to residents and businesses. The next up is the establishment of an edible food recovery program, education and outreach to the community, purchasing recyclable and recovered organic products, secure access to recycling and edible food recovery capacity, and then monitoring for that. Now, in as much as a lot of this is very onerous, the state recognized that there are substantial challenges for implementing specifically the organics collection and expanding recycling facilities in rural areas. And so with that in mind, there are waivers that we have the opportunity to apply for. There are 3 waivers that are listed there. The rural exemption is the first and foremost. That is for any county under a population of 70,000, for which Lake County is. We are, as of the latest figures, at about 64,000. There are some other waiver opportunities. Low population waivers, that's the intent there is for counties that are over 70,000, but have certain areas of the county that would qualify, such as a city with a population less than 7,500 and less than 5,000 disposal tons, and unincorporated areas that meet the next line there. And then there is also a high elevation waiver. This came out during the review period out of a concern, to be honest, for bear country, that if you're above a certain altitude and there's no magic to 4,500 feet, bears live at under 4,500 feet, but in a desire to establish a figure that they could go by, that was how that was established. But for Lake County, we do have the opportunity to apply for a waiver that would encompass the entirety of the county, to include the incorporated cities. And now that does not exempt the county or the cities from all components of 1383. I'll jump back a slide and just kind of touch on really what it exempts or would exempt us from is organic waste collection services, organic waste capacity planning, and procurement of organic waste products. But there are certainly components that we are still responsible to implement. So jumping ahead to the next slide here, this is a generic slide that is made for kind of generic counties, generic cities. We're not all established the same way, organized the same way. But the intent here is to show that SB 1383, in as much as CalRecycle implemented the regulations, it encompasses the entire county or the entire city. So it is in the case of Lake County, the fact that we have the opportunity to exempt ourselves from the organic waste components of this, largely takes the solid waste industry component out of it, with an exception that we'll talk about. But it still has some significant implications for primarily for the edible food recovery program and Cal Green building standards and a model water efficient landscape ordinance. Those components are being worked on. Environmental health for the edible food recovery program, community development for the Cal Green building standards, which actually already is adopted. The model water efficient landscape ordinance, or MWELO, is currently underway. We've had certainly been in communication with the department heads of both of those departments, and they're working towards those. The state is, in as much as 2022 is when the regulations take effect, they want to ensure that they see progress by the different counties that are subject to the regulations. So that is in the works. And I think it's important to note one particular component of this here that I want to point out is the edible food recovery component. It's not as though the county has to go out and recover the food. The intent here is that the county would oversee a program that would basically regulate something that is already going on through food banks, free kitchens, and so they've established various tiers for edible food to be recovered. You can see tier 1. It doesn't show the date that would start, but that's 2022 when the regulations take effect. that first tier, wholesale food vendors, food service providers and distributors, grocery stores greater than 10,000 square feet, and supermarkets. Those would be the first tier of entities that would be focused on for edible food recovery. Tier 2 would follow. The regulations obviously define a lot of these, and in as much as I'm not going into the detail on how that is going to be established, environmental health has that. They're aware of it, and it's more of a monitoring and enforcement of this and communication with those vendors and providers. So at this point, I'm really just going to end my screen and talk about the waiver. I'll start my video again. The waiver that I mentioned, that is an exemption. We would be exempting ourselves should the board approve that. It's a resolution that I think was not actually included. I can share my screen for that, and I will right now. Bear with me. It's a resolution opting to affirm an exemption from the requirements of organic waste collection.
And if I may clarify, the resolution was in the packet, so it was included.
Okay, good. Well, then maybe this is a moot point, but I'll share it nevertheless.
Mr. Chair, it's included in the packet, but the title did not call it out.
Oh, in the heading of the agenda?
It did not. So the resolution can be discussed, but adopted
Okay.
next week, carried over.
Yeah, so let's discuss it, and then we'll put it in the consent agenda next week if the board doesn't have any a conversation that makes it seem controversial.
Okay, very good. So in short, this is a resolution that would exempt the county from the organic waste collection components. That would also extend to procurement of organic waste items, and just for an example of what that might include, just in my department alone, parks, we would, and for that matter, public works, there would be a requirement for say, mulch to ensure that it was from organic waste diversion. We would still be required to pursue a paper product procurement, which we already have. We would just be updating that for the new code. But in short, what this exempts us from is curbside collection of organic waste, another bin that would be specific to food waste or organic waste. So I apologize that this was not included in there. We will certainly put that on for either next week or the week following.
All right, thank you very much. And my mistake, it was not an attachment on the 6.2. I was looking at jumping ahead to 7.6, which is also related to your department, so I apologize for that. But thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Supervisor Scott.
I definitely agree with this resolution. It's just not feasible for us to have organic waste collection, but I would like us to educate our public on how easy it is to compost, maybe working with the schools for composting and how they can use that material in their garden. So, maybe something good could come out of this.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Supervisor Simon?
I often go along the same lines as Supervisor Scott. Obviously, in agreement.
Maybe get the mic closer.
Oh, yeah, that's all.
I don't know that we can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Got it?
Nice.
All right, excellent. Yeah, it was moved around. So obviously in agreement with the ordinance, looking for the exemption, but I agree with Supervisor Scott, just educating the public on, how to get rid of this waste that's in the home. I know that there are a lot of programs and other things that are happening throughout the county, especially with our supermarkets and other stuff. They support our senior centers and those types of things. So there's a lot of stuff already happening. Now we just got to get this all finalized. And I was briefed because I am an alternate on the ESJPA. Obviously, Lars goes to the meetings, and I know there's another one this week that he'll be attending, but was briefed on it and gave complete support on what Public Services and Lars is trying to do with this. So,
Thank you. Supervisor Pyska?
Yeah, I know a lot of municipalities in Southern California and the Bay Area, they'll reach out to their residents and show how a worm bin can be designed and implemented at home, or a home composter. I know the city of Pomona was really effective at getting that out to people. So there's a lot of ways that we can work with this. And, you know, I have a little rolling composter at home for just food scraps, for veggies and things. So it's really effective. And I think that there's a lot that we can do to work with our public to reduce this waste.
So I have a quick question. I think I know the answer due to the fact that we are, Supervisor Crandall and myself are on the Solid Waste Task Force. This is something that eventually rural counties will be forced to do in the future. It's just at this moment in time we have the exemption, and who knows for how long the exemption will be allowed. But I agree that looking at the successes of other counties in getting this going, I know I did live in Humboldt County when they started doing their process before the state regulations came out, and that seemed to have gone well. But I think that it's something to look into, and I'm going to, one of my questions to you is, I believe that there is a higher possibility in just the composting aspect, if we do it in a large scale throughout the whole county, to help us with generating electricity or energy that we can harness. Am I correct on that versus the rest of the waste that is disposed of in the landfill?
If I'm understanding the statement, that organics essentially is what would create the methane that then would provide the opportunity to generate the electricity, if I'm understanding you correctly.
Correct. And I think that having it in one specific area might help us to be able to generate that rather than trying to find a way, because I know the landfill is difficult. It's not the high capacity that other landfills see, and so the amount of methane coming out is not maximized in comparison. And so I'm very interested in looking at ways how this not only helps us have a cleaner and better environment and a better control of food as well, and not control of food, but control of waste of food, but also the idea that we can harness it into energy as well in the long run. So I think there's a lot of positives, and I'd love for us to continue looking at other counties and seeing their successes and trying to carbon copy them, because I think if we can implement this before the state forces us to, I think that's to a benefit, as long as we can make sure that it's feasible.
Yeah, a couple of points on that. The landfill, the organics that are currently in landfills that may do what's called landfill gas to energy projects, this is actually a little bit of a catch-22. The organics, if we're reducing it from the waste stream, that would basically reduces their fuel to generate that energy. So there could be a risk for those landfills. We do not do the landfill gas to energy. We do capture our methane through a collection system at the landfill. And in theory, this would be reducing the amount that we would be capturing. But the other point is that the 1383 is going to be reducing, as is indicated, the amount that goes into the landfills. So capturing it at a landfill may not be the option, but there are other options out there. And I'll reference the energy studies that we have going on through Train, specifically the advanced energy solutions that they're looking at, and that is one component that they are factoring in, particularly as it relates to 1383.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any further comments before we open it up for the public? Oh, can't find the public. There they are. And anybody with their hands up, again, click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or dial *9 on your phone. And seeing none, let's go ahead and bring it back for action. Actually, we cannot take action since we don't have the resolution attached to the agenda item, and so we will see that agenda item coming back to us next week.
Very good. Thank you, Board.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. And with that, let's go ahead and move on. We have a topic for public services as well on item 7.6, so let's go ahead and take that up now. Consideration of solid waste handling and collection company change of assignment.
All right, good morning. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director again. I appreciate you taking this up, though it was on-timed. So the county currently has two franchise waste haulers, Lake County Waste Solutions in generally, I'll say generally the northwestern portion of the county, and South Lake Refuse and Recycling generally in the south and east portion of the county. For about 15 years, Lake County Waste Solutions has been the unincorporated, the northwestern portion and geographically the larger area. They've been the franchise hauler for waste collection and handling. In July, about a month ago, Lake County Waste Solutions notified Public Services of their intent to sell to another company, Waste Connections, and the agreement that we have with Lake County Waste Solutions it includes a section that clarifies the process to go through this change of control. They were required to provide a variety of information, essentially to verify that the company that is the proposed would be the new owner has the capacity to perform under the existing contract. I'll note that Lake County Waste Solutions and I guess I'll call it the parent company, CNS Group Holdings. They own and operate a variety of companies and facilities in the solid waste world around us. They own and operate the Lakeport Transfer Station on Soda Bay Road. They also manage the waste collection for the city of Clear Lake through Clear Lake Waste Solutions, as well as Ukiah Waste Solutions, and what's called a MRF, or a Material Resource Recovery Facility in Ukiah, where the bulk of our waste that is collected in the unincorporated county under Lake County Waste Solutions is hauled to their facility, and it's sorted through, and then the waste comes back to the landfill. So all of those entities are being purchased by Waste Connections. The city of Clear Lake recently had a similar presentation to their city council. The reason theirs was ahead of ours. They have a different agreement that requires, to be honest, they required less documentation. For example, for Lake County, we required the actual agreement with redacted information, but the agreement between the two entities. So once we received the full packet, then I was comfortable submitting it to the board. So there is a requirement that a resolution is provided. That's the resolution that was referenced in the previous agenda item. Resolution consenting to the change of control from Lake County Waste Solutions to Waste Connection. So with that, I'll close out and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board? So I do have to make a quick statement, and that is that I think that CNS Waste Solution has been a great partner. I know that I appreciate the community aspect of how they help out with some of our community cleanups. They have kept their prices, in my opinion, very low when comparing to other neighboring counties and neighboring services that they receive. And I hope that's what we will continue to see. I know that there have been increases in the past to the rates, and I'm sure that we will see those, but I hope that they stay and maintain within the range that we have been seeing to make sure that it is affordable and is can continue into the future for people to be able to afford to do this the right way and how to get rid of waste from their residences. So I appreciate the past and looking forward to the future. So looking forward to approving this resolution. Supervisor Crandall.
Yes, I'd like to echo that, but also add that when I first started as a supervisor, there was a lot of concern about Lake County Waste Solutions, and they started coming to town halls, they started putting out education, and after a while, people are answering their own questions. Well, not answering their own questions, but someone from the community will answer the questions because they've been educated. And so I appreciate that education that they put forward, came to the meetings, and again, I hope the same thing happens with this transition. So.
And if I could add to that, the Vice President of Lake County Waste Solutions, Bruce McCracken, will be staying on under Waste Connections as I'm not sure of the title essentially our points of contact with the garbage company. Let's just use it that way. Our direct point of contact will remain the same.
Thank you very much. Any further comments before we open it up for the public? Let's go ahead and open up for the public. Please raise your hand if you're in the Zoom room, or if you have a comment in the boardroom. Let's go ahead and bring it back to the board for action.
Your board may consider offering the resolution, which will effectuate the change of assignment referenced.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the resolution.
Resolution has been offered by Supervisor Simon. Johanna, roll call, please. And thank you, Ms. Grant.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Ewing.
Thank you, and a specific thank you to Anita and her staff for helping me go through the agreement and get this done the right way. So thank you, Anita.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to item 7.2. Consideration of letter authorizing North Coast Opportunities to apply on behalf of Lake County Risk Reduction Authority for the 2021 California Fire Safe Council County Coordinators Grant Project and serve as the grant sub-recipient. Supervisor Simon.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair Sabatier. We come to you today as the Risk Reduction Authority. I know Jessica will speak on this item also, but looking for support to go for the County Coordinators Grant, which is an opportunity right now through the California Fire Safe Council for the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority. We are asking that NCO be the agency that we support on going after that grant. We've had multiple meetings since NCO has been on board and really looked at a collaboration opportunity for all the agencies that may be eligible for this opportunity, and NCO seems to be the one that's going to fit this. This is an opportunity for us to bring the funds in to continue growing the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority, and today we're just looking for that full support from the board as we move forward with this opportunity.
And just to clarify the process, it's required that counties apply for this grant, and that's why the Risk Reduction Authority is authorizing NCO to be the fiscal sponsor, and then those funds will go through NCO to the Fire Safe Council to set up that coordinator.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions about this item? So I do have one quick question, if you can clarify. It says North Coast Opportunities is the sub-recipient. The recipient is Lake County, since they're trying to get the grant on behalf of Lake County?
Yeah, so, yeah, and our Fire Safe Council is currently an ad hoc committee under the Board of Supervisors, but it's working to reestablish itself as a nonprofit. So, so that's why we have NCO kind of facilitating the process for us, because we need that coordinator to get it to the place where it stands alone from us.
Right. And I know that I was looking at the grant online, and it does say Lake County.
Yes.
But obviously it also says that risk reduction authorities, nonprofits, and others. I was kind of led there through some conversations that I had with admin. The letter reads differently than what you would expect it to read like, just so that it meets the requirements of the grant. Because obviously it's going to be the Risk Reduction Authority that's going to be looking at the decision-making of how to utilize the funds, and North Coast Opportunity is just going to be the sub-recipient and the one working on the behalf of the Risk Reduction Authority to get it done correctly. And just the way it reads, it's a little convoluted, because we're trying to make sure it fits within the parameters of what the grant asks us to do. So I wanted to ask those questions, knowing the answers, so that we can make sure that it was public and clear as to what was going on and how it was going to go. And I I have to say, I'm seeing a lot of action coming from the Risk Reduction Authority. I'm proud of what's happening over there. Thank you so much for the work that is occurring there. It seems to be expanding more and more. You got the cities on board, you got the water districts coming. We're getting grant opportunities, and this is exactly the position that we wanted to be in. So this is great. Thank you very much.
Just a follow-up comment, and thank you for those clarifying questions that you have, Bruno. So we just are always educating. But, one of these steps that we worked hard for the last 2.5 years was getting NCO on board as a nonprofit and help us be the coordinator. We really do see a bright future in this opportunity here. And what we were looking after the CMAT, the Community Mitigation Assessment Team evaluation that they came in, the first one in California's history through U.S. Forest Service, was we were looking at the opportunity, in my vision from the beginning, the Risk Reduction Authority was the umbrella that everything was under. Well, when we did the CMAT process, it's the opposite way. We are the conduit for all the agencies that are working on, as you said, the cities, the counties, our nonprofit agencies, clerk, RCD, all these other things, where we can support these opportunities to bring dollars into the county and figure out where the best fit is. And this is just the beginning step. When we came to you, myself and Jessica, asking for the $26,000 and, getting us the opportunity to get the coordinator in, this was the vision we had, to be able to bring these dollars in and make this a standalone opportunity to work on all risks in Lake County, and obviously fire mitigation and other things of this possibilities are all in the realm of what we're doing. So I'm excited where it's going to, and we're going to continue growing on this.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Scott.
I just wanted to point out that I've had many opportunities to work with North Coast Opportunities, and they have proven to be great partners in grant writing and very successful in bringing millions of dollars to Lake County. So I definitely support this.
Okay. And without any further comments?
Do we need to hear from Tammy?
Yeah, I was thinking, I was just going to say that.
Let me see. I do not see
yes,
her. Tammy Widener, if we can go.
Nope, Tammy Alizé.
Oh, sorry.
She was on, but she may have dropped off.
I apologize for that. I do not see that name.
Okay.
So go ahead and let's open it up for the public. If there's any public comments, please raise your hand in the Zoom room. Phone 6205. Please state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. This is Bart Levinson, and I have a question. From the public's point of view, it's hard to understand exactly how the money is flowing, and we have common understandings that when we get a service, we actually in some way pay for that service. So, for instance, if a broker handles our money, the broker is actually making money off of handling our money. That's how they survive. And so I would like to ask that the county and NCO be simply in plain sight about the cost of the service to Lake County. It's not that there's no cost. There obviously is a cost, and it's our precious dollars that we need for risk reduction in this incredibly incendiary county that urgently needs mitigation and brush management. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and wondering if there's a response.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Bart. But we do have a standing agreement that was approved here by the board for NCO's services. If you'd like to contact us, we can get you that information, but it was approved here at the board level for the contracting services. I'm probably going to get the exact amount. I don't have it right off the head. Around 50.
The agreement you're referring to was approved by the Risk Reduction Authority itself. There's an agreement between the Risk Reduction Authority and NCO for the services that they provide to the Risk Reduction Authority.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Yeah, but again, this grant is to develop capacity within the fire safe councils and hire coordinators. So this funding is not actually for the mitigation of hazardous vegetation or any of that work. This is for building the capacity so that fire safe councils across California can function the way that they need to function.
But this would be used for Lake County Fire Councils.
Yeah, well, Lake County's Fire Safe Council. We
Yes.
have South Lake Fire Safe Council, but this is for Lake County's Fire Safe Council.
Yes. And I believe, if you don't mind my kind of segueing into what I believe the question was, is there any part of this grant that is being requested that would go to the grant writers, or is this entirely for the project of developing the fire safe councils here in Lake County?
Well, I wish that Tammy was here to speak to that exactly. I know Bart was present for our Risk Reduction Authority yesterday where we went over this, where Tammy spoke about the different areas of where this funding's going to go. But some of it is for NCO to help facilitate this work.
And I want to say, in my experience of grants, and again, I can't speak specifically to this one, but it's always limited in the grant what can be used for the administrative part of the grant. Maybe it's like 10% is usually the maximum, but it doesn't have to be exactly that number. But yeah, I can't speak specifically to this one. I did not look at the specifics of how that grant could be utilized. Okay, thank you very much. There was another, nope, no other hand up. And let's go ahead and bring it back to the board, looking for action.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to motion to approve the letter authorizing North Coast Opportunities to apply on behalf of Lake County Risk Reduction Authority for the 2021 California Fire Safe Council County Coordinators Grant Project and serve as the grant subrecipient and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Simon, second by Supervisor Pyska. Johanna, roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott. Aye. Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7.3, consideration of ordinance amending urgency ordinance number 3108, requiring all persons, regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status, wear face coverings in county facilities. CAO Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, back on August 3rd, your board adopted urgency ordinance number 3108, and it requires that all persons in county facilities wear face coverings regardless of their vaccination status. At the time your board approved that, you also directed staff to develop some language for a trigger that would lead to rescission of the ordinance when conditions improve. And so what we have before you today for your consideration would be that that this ordinance requiring masking in our facilities be in place as long as the COVID-19 transmission rate in Lake County is moderate or above. Moderate transmission is, as defined by the California Department of Public Health, is not more than 5.9 cases per 100,000 and testing positivity of not more than 4.9%. And so under what is being proposed today, when the transmission rate in Lake County falls below moderate, the ordinance would then be calendared for reconsideration at your next board meeting. Depending on the timing of it, the ordinance could be taken up as a regular agenda item if we have a board agenda that is to be posted soon, or it could be taken up as an extra item, given that it would meet the criteria as urgent, or it could, a special meeting of your board could be called to take it up. And so based on the transmission rate at that time and other critical local factors, such as the emergency room and ICU capacities, or other factors happening in the county, your board could then consider taking action to rescind the ordinance.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Any comments or questions from board members? So upon reading this, I found a couple of things that I wanted to discuss. One is there's no timeline for how long we've reached those numbers. And I think that we need to kind of mimic what was there before, which is if you're within that range for 2 weeks, then you can go ahead and drop down to, it just seems like it might be too quick, where the numbers might be low today, but all of a sudden they jump back up tomorrow, and then we said we're done, but yet we're still in the same potential situation we're in. So I'd love to add, for the course of 2 weeks and going from Tuesday to Tuesday, that, or Monday to Monday, where the next day on Tuesday is when we make those, that change, or whatever it is that we choose. But I also don't feel it needs to come back to the board. I think we set the triggers and we say that it will, the following day, 24 hours later, is when the change occurs. And I think that way it's not based on how we feel, it's based on specific trigger points, and not if we feel like saying yes or no today, which could change based on many different things. Personal experiences with COVID within our friends and families, or things like that, where all of a sudden 5.9 or 4.9 is not, doesn't feel good enough for us because of our personal experiences. So I think it should just kind of be like the tiered system was, where it's just there and we know it's going to happen, and we know when the changes occur. On the other side, there's also no trigger to bring it back. And I think that instead of waiting and waiting and waiting till one of us or the staff decides to bring this back, saying, hey, it's winter time, we're seeing another surge, as some are anticipating will happen during our winter time, why don't we also put a trigger for when in our county facilities masking is mandatory again? And I propose that we use the purple tier, because the moderate tier was the orange tier. We use the purple tier when we reach 10 cases per 100,000 or 8% positivity rate, that at that point we want masking again mandated in our facilities. This time though, I think we need to act faster and give it a 1 week period of being in those numbers rather than 2 week period. I think that having the trigger of the on and off is easy for us to know where we are and what will happen, and that way it's not again up to us and how we feel on a day-to-day basis, it's just what we approve of. Of course, any of us can bring back the ordinance to change it if we choose, but I think it's easier for the public to have those things set in stone and to know what expectations are. So that's what I would like to offer. And the last thing, and I don't want to make that change today because I think it takes a little bit more research and a little bit more understanding. Cases are cases, hospitalizations are hospitalizations, and deaths are deaths. Eventually we will have a lot of cases and not much hospitalization and definitely not much deaths. And so the case rate eventually will become a moot point because of vaccination rates that we see throughout the state of California. It's a large, the more you're vaccinated, the larger the percentages of your cases that you are seeing that are vaccinated but not hospitalized. For example, LA, I believe, I forget who it was that was telling me, if it was Adventist Health, 25% of their population that are getting COVID are vaccinated, but they're not showing up at the hospitals either. Right now, last I checked, we're at about 10 or 11% of our cases were vaccinated. And again, we're not seeing those cases necessarily showing up in the same numbers in our hospitals. So hospitalization rate, I think, eventually needs to be involved in this, because we're going to see cases, and if those cases aren't going to the hospital, our issue is overwhelming the healthcare system, not just having cases. And so I don't want that changed today because I think it takes more conversation and more research, but I think eventually it does need to get there as we see the increase of vaccination rates, which means a decrease in the severe impact of the virus. Supervisor Peisker.
Yes, so we did talk about that in our committee, and you know, setting our trigger to go into masking at the purple measures, and then coming out at the orange for moderate transmission. I disagree that it happens automatically, because as we know, there's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot of things that are happening and changing. And, you know, if this were to happen on a Friday night, then we're going to ask staff to work all weekend. I think it's reasonable for us to come back here and have that conversation and make a decision. I feel pretty confident that we're not going to make emotional decisions about this. We haven't so far. So, in my mind, it's better for us to just come back and have that conversation. It's not going to make a big difference, maybe a few days, but having that 2-week period is important, and we can set the thresholds for what day that is. And if it's a Monday to Monday to Monday, then that makes sense for us to be here on a Tuesday making that decision. As far as the hospitalizations being put into this, I think that's something that we can talk about at a later date. When we talk about virus spread within the community, it's still going to be, moderate spread. Even though we don't have people hospitalized, it's still going to be something that's spreading through our community. And, we may have lower hospitalizations, but lower hospitalizations compared to where we're at right now is still a high amount of hospitalizations. And that's the time when we have mutations, and, so I think that's something that we could table and come back to later. But I'm totally fine with the ideas that you presented, with waiting 2 weeks, setting purple for the trigger to go into masking, and orange to trigger to come out.
And if I may add in 1 week for the going into purple.
Going into purple, yep.
So 2 weeks orange, 1 week purple, and using those data sets. Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, just a comment, obviously, obviously we're always adapting and learning. So I agree with the triggers. I think that's a good suggestion, the 2 weeks, just as we had done before. And I am in agreement, obviously, with the 1 week into the purple. So, I think they are good suggestions. I do like the idea of it not having to come back all the time. We have these triggers set, but I know each and every one of us will be keeping an eye on it. And if there's a conversation that needs to be had, any one of us can bring it back. So I am in agreement with those suggestions as we move forward.
Okay. Any further comments? Supervisor Scott?
I definitely agree with both triggers. I don't feel it needs to come back. I like to see it automatically, because we could always bring an item back if we feel that we need to readjust something.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, I agree with the changes that are proposed for the orange, 2 week orange, 1 week purple. And if we didn't have to bring it back, I'd be more comfortable with that. So that way we have something in place to ensure that something's just implemented, but,
And I'll be my own devil's advocate. Bringing it back at least makes an announcement, at the very least. And if we do have a discussion and a debate over it, then that's one thing. But I think at the very least, it makes an announcement to the public as to the changes and to our staff, to the changes that are expected to occur. So I'm okay with bringing it back. We do have our COVID update that we plan on having more often. And I think that it's just a part of that same conversation. Supervisor, Ms. Grant.
No, thank you. I did have a question, if your board would allow me to ask it.
Please.
Section 3, sub C, says the Board of Supervisors hereby directs the county administrative officer to implement this mandate in a manner reasonably practical for county employees, subject to board approval. So if you're going to do this without it coming back to your board, how would the fact that the trigger point has been hit, there needs to be a central source of that information, otherwise employees may look at statistics and self-determine. So there's going to have to be a centralized source. This is where the information comes from. This is how it gets out to employees. Otherwise, just saying when this trigger happens, you'll have a great deal of inconsistency and potential issues with people.
And I know that we do have the positivity rate and our case rate on the COVID-19 data information site, but we don't have we'll have to see if we can implement as of this day, we've started counting the days of the 2 weeks that we've now been inside this criteria that we're looking to hit.
My point, sir, is that the devil will be in the details on something like this, because obviously I know your board's not expecting each employee to go to a website and see, today do I wear a mask, what number is it? So there'll have to be some type of way that this can be relatively simply done to avoid confusion.
Well, and that is really the basis for my recommendation, and that it come back to a board meeting, because the announcement comes out after the board meeting.
Yeah. And I've changed my mind on that. I think that that's a perfect way to do it, to make sure that it's announced to the public who's going to be walking into our buildings and to our staff who are in our buildings to begin with. Thank you for those comments. Any further comments from the board before we open it up for the public? Okay, let's go ahead and open it up for the public. Please raise your hand if you have a comment or question about this item. Phone 6205.
Good morning, this is Bart Levinson, and I certainly am not qualified to comment on this. However, from everything that I've heard, it seems that the urgent issue at hand is that as long as the virus can circulate, we all are at risk of mutations taking hold, and that those mutations might be stronger, make us sicker, or be more transmissible. And so I would urge the board to consider how long it takes to get information out to people and have people following procedure. And it's actually been seen in our county, it seems to me, that once a dam is opened a little bit, people just go for it. So I'd ask the board, please, to be very careful about deciding ahead these blocks of time. We need to watch what's happening with the transmission of the disease if we are ever going to get in a better place in stopping this disease from circulating in our county and world. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further comments from the public? And seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. I will say that every time it's transmitted to another person, there's the potential for mutation, but in my opinion, the United States is not going to be the focal point for those types of mutations in comparison to other places that have almost less than 10% vaccination rates or less, which is basically what we are seeing. There have been some mutations in the United States, but not as bad as some of the others we've seen from the UK, South Africa, and now coming from India. And those places were definitely low vaccination rates at the time. So hopefully we will keep moving forward and not go backwards. If there's no further comments, CAO Hutchinson.
So, Mr. Chair, my recommendation at this point would be that that you give staff an opportunity to rework this, not have you approve it as was recommended today, and let us rework it based on the discussion and come back to your agenda either next week or the week after. Right now, our numbers are way above moderate, and I expect it's going to be some time before we see them even getting close to the level that would bring on rescission of this. And so rather than have confusion because we approve something that's partway there but not all the way there, I would recommend that we just rework it and come back, if not next week, the week after.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's go back to the agenda. And we're going to move on.
Can we take a comfort break?
We are going to take a 10-minute break, and let's actually take a little bit longer. Let's come back at 10:45, so 13 minutes.
Whoa.
Check, check. You okay? Aw, it went up. Yeah. All right, it's 10:45 a.m. Let's go ahead and come back to order and continue. We are on item 7.4, consideration of A, addition of special meeting dates to the board's annual meeting calendar for 2021 for the purpose of redistricting public hearings, and B, redistricting public hearings schedule. CAO Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy CAO Matthew Rostein will present this item.
Good morning, Board. As always, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to present to you. I wanted to, this morning we're considering adding some special meetings and to facilitate our redistricting public hearing schedule. And as your Board is aware, county staff have been working with Margaret Long of Prentice Long to develop and facilitate an open and inclusive redistricting process. Your Board, as part of this process, is required to host a series of 4 public hearings, and my apologies for a typo in the memo, it says 5, but the Elections Code requires 4 public hearings to receive input regarding potential changes to district boundaries. And at least one of those meetings must be in the evening or on a weekend day, but certainly there's an encouragement to facilitate those meetings at a range of times in order to enable the broadest possible participation. So the hearing schedule that is proposed in the memo was developed with those considerations in mind, and they will require that your Board add 3 special meetings to your calendar, which would be Tuesday, August 31, Saturday, October 2, and Tuesday, November 30. And there are some times proposed for those meetings to commence in the memo, and I believe that CAO Hutchinson has an update that may change the start time of one of those meetings.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So looking at the proposed meeting date of August 31st, and the time there in the memo is suggesting 1 or 2 p.m., I just wanted to offer that your Board may want to consider making that the normal time your Board meets of 9 a.m. And the reason I suggest that is because I do anticipate that there will be some other regular agenda items that need to be heard that day. As you know, the way it stands now, if we don't add that special meeting, your Board would have 2 Tuesdays in a row without a meeting, and this is a difficult time to go that long without meetings. It just happens to be the way the dates fell, and so I think there will be other regular business on that day. And the public is accustomed to you coming together at 9 a.m., so you may want to consider that.
Thank you very much.
And if I can just add a bit of additional background, whatever time we do host the public hearing, it needs to be a timed item if it's part of one of your standard or special Board of Supervisors meetings. So we will want to set that time so it can be appropriately noticed for the public.
I appreciate that. That was going to be one of my comments, is to make sure to have a specific time, because that just makes sense to do it that way. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? So I do have one comment, and I'm going to make an assumption, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but these meetings, I don't know about the Saturday one, but at least the Tuesday ones, other than the regular Board meeting, will be also on Zoom. It doesn't specifically specify Zoom or in public, in person, and I just want to make sure that people were aware that we are going to simplify the process by making it available on Zoom. That way you do not have to be here in person physically.
Right, these would be run just like any other regular Board meeting, and so if you want to comment, you can do that in the boardroom, or you can do that in Zoom, and if you just want to watch, you can do that on Granicus. You can do it on Facebook Live, or you can watch it after the fact on the YouTube page.
And the Saturday, same thing?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sure that we will do, as you mentioned, it'll be on Granicus Live. If it's on Granicus, that means they'll also have the availability to do e-comments. That way we will get that information. It will be part of the public record.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure and put that out there. Any further comments or questions? All right, let's go ahead and open it up for the public. Any comments on this item or questions? Looking at the Board and looking at the Zoom room. And seeing none, let's bring it back for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the addition of special meetings Tuesday, August 31st, starting at, do I need to go starting at 9 a.m. and give a specific time?
Mr. Supervisor Simon, I think you can just, so we have a attached calendar that would show the meeting dates. I think you could just approve the proposed calendar. However, with that said, that doesn't include the times, so maybe, pardon me? Yeah. So, so you probably should be deliberate and call out the 3 with the specific times.
Okay, yeah,
And
because Tuesday, August 31st does say commence at 1 p.m.
yes.
Right.
And so does your board wish to do that at 9? Is there
I'm fine with 9.
consensus
Looks like
for
you have
that?
consensus to me.
Okay, so go ahead and, a motion to approve the addition of special meetings Tuesday, August 31st to commence at 9 a.m. Saturday, October 2nd to commence at 10 a.m. Tuesday, November 30th, commence at 9 a.m. And, I missed one, I apologize.
Tuesday, November 30th is already a scheduled meeting. It's just on there, listed there for your information.
Okay,
So there's just the 3, the last one being Tuesday,
August
November 30th.
31st, starting at 9 a.m., Saturday, October 2nd, to commence at 10 a.m., and Tuesday, November 30th, to commence at 9 a.m. Is that okay, or do you want me to?
Yes, perfect.
Looking for a second?
Second?
I have a motion from Supervisor Simon, second by Supervisor Pyska. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Yes.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
November 2nd is a regular board
It's a
meeting, so there
regular
was
day,
no
already
need to add
counted.
it to the calendar today.
Okay.
Right, but for public awareness, it'll also be one of the redistricting hearings.
Correct. Okay, moving on to item 7.5, discussion and consideration of an ordinance amending Article 7 of Chapter 13 of the Lake County Code relating to administrative fines and penalties. Ms. Grant?
Thank you. Good morning, board. Good morning, board.
Now, let's go ahead and, if you can be muted on Zoom, perfect. You should be good.
All right, thank you.
Except I think you need to turn on your microphone. I think you turned it off.
Every time there. Hello? Okay. There's a term Luddite. It means not technologically advanced. My picture shows up next to that definition. The matter before you today is the discussion and consideration of an ordinance amending Article 7 of Chapter 13 relating to administrative fines and penalties. I'm not sure if what your board has before you actually shows track changes. If it does not, I do have hard copies that show those changes in red. If you would prefer hard copies, I can make those available to you.
I did see some highlighted text and some bluish purple, depending on what my color site is, but did not see any red lining on the document itself.
Would you like hard copies? And I can make
Please.
one available also to Supervisor Scott via email and one for the press. So this is nothing. Should be 4 of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you will see that, one to Supervisor Scott. You'll see from the memo that these are, there's been some reorganization, certainly some changes in terms of beefing up the ordinances. I did go back and look at earlier meetings where your board had expressed concerns in terms of the strength of the penalties imposed. You wanted to make sure that you had options for more significant penalties for the AVO program, for example, for hazardous vegetation, etc. by beefing up those penalties, you'll see that that will apply to any of those areas of nuisance abatement that are in Chapter 13. I've reorganized and put all of the types of penalties together in one section. The point of a penalty ordinance is to ensure that people understand what they risk by violation. And one of the problems that occurs with ordinances frequently is things are added and there's almost kind of a haphazard effect from those additions, so I tried to put them all together. Beginning on page 1, you'll see just simply the addition of fines and to penalties in the title and section 13.45. On page 3, there was a request to define cannabis operations without the word business preceding activity, and that change appears there. Moving on to page 7, you'll see that has been reconfigured. The infraction section under 48.2 is beefed up to include separate violations for each day. The amount for an infraction is set by Government Code 25132. There's nothing that can be done about that, but the per day penalty. And I understand that it's rare that your board even considers those infractions from a criminal standpoint, but it remains something in your arsenal should you want to use it. And then the amount of penalty other, which addresses the $1,000 for each calendar day from the date of transmittal of the notice of violation, which is also an additional hammer because the penalties accrue as soon as that notice of violation has been transmitted. I did include also, there was a request from your board to require under certain circumstances that the responsible person have to respond within 15 days. Whether you want to include that, considering the fact that it begins now to accrue from the notice of transmittal, you may not, but you may still want it in there as an additional option. 48.4 are penalties for failure to obtain or maintain any permit related to cannabis. The language beginning on page 8 does beef up the issues for these stiffer penalties, and does that because the Constitution prohibits excessive fines and fees. So that means that your board has to have certain findings, certain rationale that justifies fees of a certain type. And so that appears on pages 8 and 9. The administrative penalty shows on page 9. The amount of that penalty is on page 10. You also indicated that you wanted something that would structure these where 30 days would not necessarily always be the time frame, so that you'll see that when it comes to page 11, for failure to obtain a county permit, there's a per cannabis plant penalty, and also a specific reference that under certain circumstances where there's an imminent danger to public health, summary abatement would be employed, which would obviate that 30-day notice requirement that your board was concerned about. I included an interest provision on the amounts owed. Your board may or may not want it, but it's certainly something you can do. And again, at the bottom of page 14, it refers to the requirement that the responsible person have to respond and address certain violations. That's something that can be included. From what I understood from your board, it was something that in more complicated or complex cases you wanted a plan. This gives the ability to call that out. It doesn't have to be used for everything. If you've just got a pile of garbage in your driveway, the plan is to dispose of it properly. So then you'll see it beginning on page 17. Those are just strikeouts because the sections have been renumbered in order to put them together in one particular section. And going on then only to page 25, under sub D on that page, there was the request that previously it said the enforcement officer wasn't required to attend the hearing. Now the language is the enforcement officer, or if unavailable, his or their supervisor shall attend the hearing. So that is it in a nutshell. As I said, The point of all of this was to beef up the penalties and to organize it in a way that someone could look at it from start to finish and understand that different conduct. And rather than calling out specific things other than the cannabis, which also could be adjusted, the penalties for anything that's not an infraction have simply been made more onerous and bumped up. And obviously, the extent of those penalties and how much you charge would depend upon the circumstances. But that would apply to AVA, to hazardous vegetation, to anything else that your board saw fit to apply it to. So it gives you the flexibility. I was trying to make sure I was responsive to your wishes while at the same time giving you as much flexibility in the ordinance as there could be within the confines of a fine penalty ordinance. So that is it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments about this document that we are reviewing today?
I do, but I just lost my thing.
And I should say that this was my intention, just to present this as a draft. I'm certain your board may have many changes or adjustments. The only thing that I would suggest is changes and adjustments should be absolutely put over to another time because, again, it's good to avoid that hodgepodge bedspread quilt kind of presentation with an ordinance to make sure that everything stays in a relatively organized format if possible.
Thank you for that. Supervisor Crandall?
Yes, so there was a couple of concerns that I had, and we could probably work this out easy, but I think there is an answer for the one that I'm bringing up, but someone had asked me, a constituent had asked me about, instead of 15 days being 10 days, but I noticed above on 48.2, it states that the penalty to be imposed shall be calculated based on a number of calendar days from the date of transmittal. So they would still accrue the fines from the date that it's been addressed initially, right? Yeah.
That's what I had said. I included the 15 days when there was a request for a report, but I had also backed up the accrual to the date of transmittal of the violation. So you may not, I left it in there as an either or in case you didn't want to back the penalty up that far. As I said, it's a work in progress. But if you do decide that the penalty accrues from the date of transmittal, you don't really need, unless you want to exact an additional penalty, that 15-day time frame.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll go with the transmittal if anything. And then there's also, and this is the question I have. A lot of owners in specific areas are changing properties like really vastly. And so how is this going to, is there something in here that to that effect that we can control with that? Or, for example, some folks are getting these charges or getting red tagged in, let's say, the community growth boundary, and then they change ownership and leave, and another person accrues the property. And specific paperwork and other things are not followed through on, and so I want to make sure that whoever commits the crime at least has to pay the fine.
May I inquire?
Please.
So this would be a situation then where someone has received a notice, but then the property is in the process of changing hands, and the new owner has received no notice, and all of a sudden there's abatement action? Mm-hmm. Yes, that is a very good addition, sir. I can certainly add in language that will address that. It is more difficult to hold somebody accountable, but not impossible given the remedy options available under the ordinance. So I can add a provision that will reflect that the owner at the time the violations occurred continues to be responsible.
Thank you.
If I can just piggyback on that, because that is an important issue that we're dealing with. I don't know what the rules and regulations are for real estate. Maybe you can help me, Supervisor Paiska. But what kind of disclosure is is necessary to make when there is a notice of violation for code violations on a specific property and that property goes through the process of being sold. Is it mandatory to disclose those notice of violations and those code violations?
Normally, when a person has the opportunity to challenge any type of notice, a notice of violation, that precludes it from being recorded because there's been no due process afforded to that individual to plead a case, offer a defense, etc. However, with regard to the administrative penalties, there may be a way to include a recordation element that would put everyone on notice. It wouldn't be a real estate notice, but it would still be a notice. I can certainly look into that when I bring it back to see. And I can check to see whether a real estate disclosure, of course, that requires many other actors other than your board to participate. But I can look at that as well.
Okay. I was just curious because I know there's a lot of others that are involved, and the city of Clear Lake just went through an issue where there's been 3 years worth of code violations, and then a new owner came in saying they had no idea about the violations, and it just seems to me like somewhere along the line that should almost be a part of the process, but I don't know enough of the real estate process to say that that has to be.
Well, I can tell you that once the appeal period for any of these violations has run, whatever it is, then that information can certainly be recorded because the person has either declined his or her due process rights or has acted upon them and your board has made a decision. So in that event, that information can be duly recorded in the recorder's office, and at least people would have access to it. I don't know because I'm not a realtor, but I would think that most realtors will look to see what's on a property at the time they're representing it.
Right. Thank you.
There's no requirement to do a title check, though.
No, you can. But if a property has
Especially when you're just buying it from your friend because you want to
Right.
continue growing.
Yeah, exactly.
We can pass the pest inspection too. Any further comments or questions? Supervisor Crandall?
And I don't even think this pertains, but just you brought up real estate, and I know that in specific areas, there's problems with realtors promoting that the property has a water or a permit or for cannabis or a water permit for different things, and it's not actually happening, and I don't think this addresses here. I think we have to address that a different way, but I just want to highlight that because you mentioned real estate and some of the fines being passed on, and so it just kind of touches a little bit.
I think that's more of an ethical violation than it is a code violation.
It is, but that is something that certainly affected departments like community development could always produce an informational, and not accusing obviously anyone of anything, but simply saying, please be aware that although you may hear that a property has certain permits, you should check that for yourself. Please be aware that not all judgments, liens, or violations are going to be made known to you. You should also check the property for that type of recordation. Certainly just a little informational sheet at the counter would be helpful to people. That's something that your board could consider. It'd be separate and apart from this, as you said, Supervisor, but it would still be something that may assist people in understanding what their obligation is when they purchase property, because it can be very confusing.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any further comments?
Those were mine.
Good job.
Supervisor Simon.
Yeah, I just would like to talk, obviously, I appreciate the opportunity as this was put together, and especially with your help, good work on this, Anita, with all of our suggestions and things, but I appreciate the opportunity when we talked about AVA, the abandoned vehicle abatement situation we have here in the county, and looking at opportunities where we could really try and stem that. I think I passed another one today coming up here today, so I know we have a great program that's out there removing them, but we always run into that roadblock of tracking down the owners and really setting a tone that, not in Lake County. It can't happen here. We've got to get a handle on this, so I appreciate that opportunity as we go forward. But I do have a question on cannabis, and I just go back to implementation of our ordinance. So My vote on the ordinance obviously was set rules and regulations and look for a compliance opportunity for folks who want to do cannabis here in Lake County. We've had the ordinance for 3 years, and we know we have an abundance of folks that are growing illegally in the county. And there's really not repercussion. We talked a little bit about here. They buy the property and then move ownership if there's something going wrong with it, and then they're able to continue those illegal operations. So what I would like to ask for is we have step 1, step 2 violation within 12 months. If there's a third violation on a property or something, if there could be, and I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it, moratorium on that piece of property, not the ownership. So if there are, you know, multiple violations or something, because right now we're in a cash business. So $5,000, $1,000, if that money keeps coming in, you're going to pay those fines or you're going to fight through those. But if there's an opportunity, because we have implemented some new technology, you know, we have the satellite imagery, we could go specifically to the property or the parcel numbers, say, listen, this one's been in violation for 3 years, there's no application. Now we want a path to compliance, not trying to penalize folks that are trying to do the right thing, but the folks that are just ignoring our ordinance and moving forward with illegal operations in the county, that we come up with an opportunity where there's a moratorium for 5 years or 10 years on that piece of property where they can't go back and just regrow. So I know I talked about this when we were talking about the ordinance of, hey, if you've done it wrong for so many years that you don't have an opportunity to do it. We're trying to encourage the business to be done in the proper way, but also protect those folks who have gone through the process. And I think, I don't have an exact idea, but that's kind of just to throw it out there of a moratorium on those properties that are doing it illegally. And I don't know if that's in the step 1, 2, 3 on the violations or where we could do that, but I would like to have some real teeth to help address this.
Ms. Grant?
Okay, thank you. So this would be under the section for failure to obtain a county permit, sir?
Yeah.
Is that what you, okay. In addition to the per plants. I understand what you're saying. Certainly, the individual himself, herself, themselves could be precluded forever from obtaining another permit if that's what you wanted. As to the property, that may be possible also. I'm happy to look at that and put as many teeth in that mouth as I possibly can and add that provision.
I'd just like to offer that up because we are looking for that, and we know we're never going to get 100% compliance, but the repeat offenders, because we do, I think I'll probably quote the numbers wrong, but I know when they had the last presentation, we have about 60 to 65 folks who've gone through the process. They're doing the right thing. I know we probably have another 60 to 100 that want to do that, but we have all of these illegal grows that just seem to slip through every crack we're trying to set up here, and I think using the parcel number, because that'll never change, you know, so it can't change ownership and everything, that we really try and use the tools that we have right now. And I know we have the satellite imagery already in place, being done, and, you know, the long-term vision was that, you know, we put the teeth in there for code enforcement and protect our community and this industry of the folks doing the right thing. So I'd appreciate if the board would entertain that, not set on the time frames, but we've got to do something to really let folks know we want compliance here. And if you're not going to comply in Lake County, then you don't need to be in Lake County.
So I just have a, just to clarify that, if we have a known parcel, which we have many of these, where they're repeat offenders, changing over title, and we put something in that blocks that parcel from ever having a legal grow, we have to still continually do the illegal abatement, but it takes away their ability to sell it as a parcel that could have a legal grow on it?
So,
And that would be, that's the hurdle to have to try to overcome, because you'd be looking at potentially a taking or partial taking. But as I said, I think there may be a way to impose that type of penalty without going that far. As I said, I'll do my very best to get that as far as it possibly can, because I do understand that just naming a particular applicant at the time is not going to do it. They just have a friend. Your board's seen that with you know, one person, there are multiple ways to get past those types of issues. So I will look at it and push that as far as I possibly can without walking into a legal issue.
Okay.
Okay.
And, you know, I come from the premises of thinking, you know, we license alcohol establishments in Lake County. There's a thing to go through this, you know, to get your ABC license. Just because you buy a facility that can be used as a bar doesn't mean that you can go through the process and get the license to do that. You still need to meet certain requirements and other things. So coming from that preference of something that's already set in place, that's really where I come with that idea. And I know there was going to be, you know, things that came up with it, but that's really how I look at it. So instead of reinventing the wheel, like I said, you have to meet certain requirements to open that establishment up. You have to pass all the background, you have to do all those things, and it's a license that you must acquire. And so that's where I come from in the same concept. With our cannabis, there's a path to go through that properly. But, you know, it is held against you on an ABC look at. They ask you, have you ever had a license revoked? Have you ever had this? You know, there are things that need to be answered as you move forward through that process. I know it's not an easy conversation, but I really think when we're looking to put teeth into this operation and this new industry, I just want to have that conversation some more.
Thank you for those comments.
And so I do understand, and I think that what you just mentioned is the appropriate track.
Your mic.
And as far as that can possibly be pushed for all the reasons your board has stated.
I can't hear.
For all the reasons that your board has so far stated, I will make sure that there is something responsive to your concerns.
And just looking, I think we do have consensus. Just want to check in if we have consensus on that to go ahead.
Most definitely. We need to have as much teeth as we possibly can if we have to go and put this on the property, because putting it on a person's not working. I definitely think once you violated it 2 times, you can no longer apply for anything. We don't want you here in Lake County if you're not going to do it the proper way. We're looking for good actors.
So I do want to segue on that topic as well. I like that you just said 2 times, Supervisor Scott. I'm tired of playing baseball where we have to wait for people to mess up 3 times. There's no specific requirement that we have to wait 3 times. There is a legal avenue. It's very obvious. We talk about it often. I think if you prove that you can't follow the rules 2 times, we don't want you to be involved in this for at least, you get a timeout. And I would like it to be 2 times, and we can discuss it when it comes back to us to see if that's the case. But the neighbors are really upset that we're allowing this to continue and try again and try again. Eventually, we have to recognize that it is harming the community by allowing them to try again, rather than really putting a complete red flag on that property or that individual as well. I think it needs to be both. We need to track both, because eventually they're cycling through all the people that can purchase a property. If we don't track the individuals, eventually they're going to slip right through as well.
If I may, the 1, 2, 3, of course, doesn't go to the failure to obtain a permit at all.
Yeah.
That's what your board was talking about last time, where if somebody had a permit but was messing up, you wanted to give them chances to correct. And certainly I can put something comparable in the 3rd time. When it comes to the section where you have no permit whatsoever, there is no 1, 2, 3. It's simply your board can act and act immediately. If you want to give them more chances, I can certainly insert that. But what I had understood from you was that if they have no permit, that's egregious, and you want to be able to act very quickly.
But I also think we need to be staying on top of those people that have done it legally, but once they get their permit, then it just seems like all the rules are out the window and they're doing whatever they want and they're upsetting the neighbors, and then that's when we get the calls. It's in writing what you're supposed to be following, and one time that you violate what the ordinance says, what you've agreed to do, shame on you. You do it twice, shame on us, and you're done. We really need to get harder on this.
So I'm going to confuse the conversation a little bit. I thought we were talking about people who were not licensed, because no matter how many times we go after, let's just say, a specific business, a restaurant that doesn't follow environmental health rules, we're not going to shut down the restaurant entirely for 5 years, we're going to shut them down until they fix the problem, and then they can reopen back up. And I think we need to treat a business like a business. We have a use permit for cannabis. We can put it on hold and say, fix your violation until your violation has been cleared, and then you can go ahead and continue with the business. If you mess up once, okay, you messed up once, we busted you, we have citations, we fine you. If you mess up twice and you still don't have a license, then at that point you're prohibited from getting a license for a certain amount of time. That's the perspective that I thought that we were looking at, the 1 and 2, because right now the regulations, there's some issues and confusion, both in the regulations from both our county as well as the applicant. And so I want to make sure that we're not shutting down a business entirely, because when's the last time we shut down a business for having a violation? They clear the violation, and then eventually they can continue on with their business. We also have a 10-year use permit, which is not typical for other use permits, which means that there's a way to prohibit them from continuing in the long run if there's too many issues. And I'm hopeful that in the revision of the cannabis ordinance, which I think is a great place to say no prior violations, if you have more than 2 violations, then you're not eligible for a permit for a certain amount of time. I think that's a good place to put it as well. But that there's a revocation portion to the ordinance, which right now there's not really. And I think that that's where we can do some cleanup for those that are licensed.
And whatever your board determines, the way it's written now, for those individuals who are violating the permit, there are those 3 chances. Those are existing businesses. And with each violation, the permit goes up, the violation goes up from 1,000 a day, 3,000 a day, 5,000 per day per violation. And that's an existent, but obviously that can be changed according to your direction. The failure to obtain a permit at all does not give any chances. That's an immediate corrective action. But again, this is up to whatever direction your board gives me, I'll do my best to implement.
Well, my intention when we bring it up was the non-compliant cannabis folks that are out there right now. That really was...
license.
No license. It's been on for 3 years. They haven't even came in, done an application. They're just out there growing illegal because there are no ramifications. And my comments come specifically, I understand, once you have a permit, yes, you have an opportunity. I'm not saying close those folks down. We work through that process. We have that set up. Right. What I'm talking about is, and what I brought up was for the illegal grows. It's been up for 3 years now. They've grown, in which we know we have folks that have grown every year without ever coming to the county or even seeking a permit. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that I really want to be able to just, have that, have those consequences of, listen, there's a path for compliance, and you've proven that is not the path you're on, so we don't need it here. So that was my comments coming from that point of view. I hear everybody in what we're saying. If we want to strengthen those up, I think it's a deeper conversation, but we've got to draw that line because we're all dealing with it ourselves in each district and our constituents, and I think we need to put that line in there and be firm on it. So those are my comments.
And so we're tracking the individuals, following on Supervisor Simon's comments, additionally tracking those individuals and those parcel numbers for these violations? So they can't receive a permit?
Well, certainly the individuals. As to parcels, I'm going to have to look at that because, there's obviously complications. Yeah. I can also say that the ordinance itself refers to unfair business practices and the fact that the county can bring those. Someone who's engaged in a cannabis business without the necessary permit is certainly engaging in an unfair business practice because that individual or individuals are able to bypass the system that all of the cultivators who are law-abiding may not, and puts them at a disadvantage in terms of their business, which is the essence of an unfair business practice. And that is litigation that comes with it some very, very hefty fines. The state is just $25,000 a day. That does get people's attention quickly. Yeah. It would kill me, but
So I do have a lot of notes on this. One of them starts with the definition of cannabis operations. I think that it should not include, or right now it says does not include personal use. I think that should be stricken. I think even personal use in certain areas is done illegally and should have those fines. I'm seeing a reaction from Ms. Grant, so I'm...
Oh, only because I thought, and perhaps I'm incorrect, and if so, I apologize. I thought there was the discussion that if personal use stays within the parameters as it's defined, i.e. the 6 plants, that it wasn't an illegal activity. But if it's, perhaps what you're talking about then is to say other than personal, I can cross-reference the definition to ensure, because anything else would be illegal. Personal use has certain limitations, and if one exceeds them, that is, by its nature then, an illegal use. So rather than omitting it, perhaps clarify it.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what's the at what point do you cross over to commercial, and what point does commercial cross over into illegal? Is it when you're a license and you're in violation, it's not illegal? It's just, I was getting a little confused because 10,000 square feet is pretty much the minimum that we're seeing for commercial. So if you have 6 plants, which are allowed in certain areas, sometimes indoor, sometimes you're allowed outdoor, depending on the acre of your property. I wasn't quite sure where it slides over to the next step, and I was thinking any unallowable cannabis is a nuisance, and I'd like for it to be dealt similarly. That's why I was looking to maybe look at striking it out.
I understand, sir. I'll either strike it, or if it's more clear, may I just simply clarify it?
I think clarification might help.
Okay.
So it says up to $1,000 per day. So obviously you can do anything in between. I feel that's very, I don't feel that there's language in our policy to provide guidance to code enforcement as to, is it $555? Is it $500? Is it $200? What? And when I look at the municipal code, and I spoke with Ms. Grant yesterday and said I'm going to complicate things here, so this is me complicating things. I feel that code violations should have a severity rating. Is it a low rating or is it a high rating? Like a high fence, that's a low rating in my opinion. If there's plants in your backyard and they're not supposed to be there, and especially it's a vacant lot, that's a high severity rating. At that point, I think those two should get 2 different fines, 2 different levels of fines. One is 1,000, one is 100, 200, 500, whatever it is. And also the amount of time you're given to clear your violation also depends on, is it a low severity or a high severity? High severity means it's continuous. It's a nuisance to all, and it impacts the quality of life in the community or in the surrounding area, which I would say let's make it happen as quickly as possible. What's the lowest number we can use? If we can get these plants done in 7 days, where then we can now start doing the abatement, let's get it done in 7 days. Right now it says up to 30 days, and I don't know, again, not sure if that gives enough direction to code enforcement to say what's a legitimate amount of time to do less than 30 days. And we know that with the popularity of autoflowers, 30 days is half of the lifespan of these plants, close to half, and depending on when we get to them, they may be harvested and gone by the time we get there. I'd love to look at what is the minimum amount of days that we can say they need to be abated by, because it just seems like we're always going to be playing catch up if it's 30 days or if we don't give enough explicit direction as to what the minimum is.
Certainly you can include more definitive statements. The one thing I would caution you with regard to specificity, if you keep things general, then a great number of things fall under that umbrella, under a general rule. If you make things very specific, you can limit yourself. So it's going to have to be crafted carefully to avoid eliminating certain types of things altogether. Also, I will tell you that there are some government code sections that are going to impact this, so you can't just say, well, you have 24 hours on everything. There is the opportunity to be able to challenge and take issue, which is a due process right, which you have to give time for. And so that you have to have those administrative mechanisms in place to allow for all of that. It may be doable. I can certainly draft something out. There's also a provision in the ordinance that allows your board to do some of this by resolution. So I can look at the option for you of making reference to this in the ordinance and then also providing your board with a resolution that provides the level of detail you're talking about with timeframes.
And overall, with what I bring up, my most highest priority is the minimum number of days when it comes to eradicating illegal grows. The longer we take, the more, okay, now I'm going to appeal. And there's multiple levels of appeal. And each time we get postponed to getting the end result that we're looking for, and a lot of times it's the abatement just keeps getting pushed back, and then we end up losing the battle where we didn't actually make a change for the situation. And so I'm looking for that minimum number of days that we can take to eventually go get a warrant and be able to go in and abate the plant if they have not done so.
Well, and certainly in the ordinance does make reference to summary abatement for grows without permits in cases where there's an imminent harm, which would include growing next to any type of a water source, leaching of chemicals, unsanitary conditions, etc., erosion, redirecting streams, redirecting roads, creating roads. All of those things have severe and immediate detrimental environmental effects and would be subject to summary abatement. Also, again, notwithstanding the abatement process, your board does have in its arsenal for unpermitted grows the unfair business practices action, which may take a little time, but the penalties are so severe that you oftentimes will secure a very quick level of compliance because those penalties will track you. You don't have the ability to just say, well, I'll leave this property and go on. That judgment will track the individual. So it's a serious level, but certainly I'll look to see in terms of what, in terms of the least amount of notice, but the notice is going to be dependent upon danger, risk, etc. So circumstances that you feel are going to justify a shorter notice because they only need a short period of time to accomplish a task, those would certainly justify a shorter period of time. Okay. So I can certainly do that in one of a couple of ways.
Page 10 of the document, and page 10 is under the heading of administrative penalties for failure to obtain and or maintain any permit related to cannabis operations which is required, issued, or approved. In page 10 it says, where does it say it? That if you're caught without a permit, you need to self-abate. Where does it say that?
Yeah. When you're caught
About
without
right in the
required
middle of the
county permit.
paragraph.
Unfortunately, I'm just going to read from my notes because I can't seem to find it. But you need to self-abate or submit an application for the permit. And I don't like the or, because then that almost means like you don't have to self-abate. The permit right now is taking 3 years for some people to get approved. Those plants need to go, not self-abate or submit an application for the permit.
And if you're growing illegally, then you're not going to get a permit.
And that also somewhat contradicts what we were saying.
And part of this speaks to kind of the hodgepodge that this ordinance has been. This section really should be confined in my recommendation as someone who has applied for a permit, but a permit has not yet been approved and does these things. Keeping, again, the fact that somebody who's growing without a permit is the most egregious of the acts that justifies the county acting immediately and unequivocally to correct, with other things being given the opportunity to correct. And I can certainly change that to and make that adjustment, because it should be in the process of obtaining, but has not. In other words, people who are growing too early.
And since it's under the heading of both being permitted or unpermitted, in my opinion, no matter what, you need to self-abate or we're going to abate it for you. You don't have a permit for it, so therefore it's absolutely illegal.
That's easy to correct.
Let me just keep going through my notes. I don't see, I see the, I'm sorry, I don't have the page number, but it says a structure without a permit, you're going to have to pay 5 times the permit fee.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that being in the fines for illegal cannabis. And is that because for an illegal structure, you will eventually get the permit for that structure, and so that's why you have to pay 5 times? Because I feel not only are you not paying your permit, you're not paying your taxes, and I know that we have some fairly egregious fines, but those fines, that the way we're looking at it, are also fairly egregious for those that are permitted. How, again, are we differentiating between an illegal grow and a legal grow to really put a hammer on the illegal grows? And if they don't have to pay a fee for not trying to get a permit, where right now we do that for the structures, not sure how we can add on to that.
I think that there can be some general statements with regard to other violations on the property of an illegal grow. So I think that can be adjusted.
Okay.
Okay.
And my last one, just trying to filter through for what we've already discussed or throw out. On page 16, we list all the things that we want to see on the imposition of fines. And I just want to make sure it's unsaid, and maybe it is. It says the signature of the enforcement officer, but we need to make sure they have all the contact information.
Okay.
I think that that's an important factor in communicating. And so let's make sure that that's there. And then just a quick question for the hardship waiver, which is right below. Is there a reason why that one is 14 days when everything else is 15 days? Is that, just wondering if we can maybe be consistent with 15 and not just throw in a random 14?
Oh, certainly. Again, it's the little bits and pieces that have been corrected over time. Certainly that can be adjusted.
Okay. Those were my only notes that I, well, thank you for listening to my many notes.
That's good.
Supervisor, may I say it was only a third of what I expected, so thank you.
I took out a lot because of the previous conversations. I concur with what Supervisor Simon said. We have to find a way that if you're not willing to follow the rules that we have set in place that are very available for everyone to follow, we can't just keep playing games, and we got to put people on a list.
I do think I understand, Supervisors, and I will make sure that those areas are beefed up according to the directions you're giving today.
Yeah, I have something else.
Supervisor Crandall?
And so just kind of going over and reviewing some of this, when it comes to community growth boundaries and people actually conducting illegal grows in those areas, I consider that egregious as well. One of the things we're working on, and this is just to kind of complement what we're talking about, and maybe we can implement it once this moves forward, is ensuring that there are signs put up in the specific areas or even online or something like that showing where community growth boundaries are and that there's not allowed, there's no permit, there's no grows allowed in that area. Because that's one of the problems we're having in a specific area is that they think that it is allowed because it's never been said not, but it has. They just don't research it or whatever the case may be. But there's also something I thought about in regards to that. So if someone does, let's say hypothetically, grow in that area and they egregiously do it more than once or twice or whatever the case, or be involved with that, I know that when we did the assessors training, there's a list of people that cannot purchase parcels in the county because of their past conduct. Is there something that we can do in that? Or maybe it's been a while since we had that training, but I remember they would always say, here's a list of people. As soon as you see that, don't even look, don't even process. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I thought maybe I would bring that up.
Well, that's interesting.
Like the list of contractors that the state
Yeah, it's
posts.
a little different though.
Yeah, but
It's a lot different actually, but I'll certainly look into that. And again,
Microphone, please.
I'll certainly look into that, and certainly community growth boundaries and illegal grows within those boundaries ratchet up your board's assessment of an imminent threat of harm, because community growth boundaries, there are more people to be harmed, water systems to be tainted, etc. All of those things would come into play for summary abatement as well. So, but there again, that type of information on informational cards and
Right.
on the front desk is a perfect place just to keep those reminders out there for people.
Yeah.
But certainly in the actual cannabis ordinance redraft, that could be made with repeat clarity throughout the ordinance, because sometimes saying something several times is very effective.
And that's what I know. I'm working with the group, and we're doing that messaging. We're doing a letter to send out, and we're doing some signage. And this is the perfect time, once this is moving forward, it can kind of go together so people are like on notice as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to add to that idea. If I drive through a construction, a road that's under construction, fines are doubled or whatever they are. Can we do something like that for if you're growing illegally in a community growth boundary? Or if you're illegally drafting water? Is there anything that we can add on to the fact that you are doubling the harm on you? Because one activity in the middle of nowhere is not the same activity right next to a whole bunch of residences, which is why we have community growth boundaries, is to help protect the quality of life in those areas. Is there anything that we can do to help multiply or add on to those fines in those specific areas?
Well, sir, I think so, because again, the constitutional prohibition is against excessive fines or fees. It does not state that you cannot charge something that is representative of the harm that you're attempting to deter people from committing. And in these kind of cases, certainly, what I can tell you is I'll certainly redraft and look at the language of the ordinance to make the case for you, and your board, when this comes back to you, can determine if it's adequate to justify doubling the penalties in certain circumstances, again, based upon the level of harm and the difficulty of remediating it. Because as you know, some levels of harm you can say, well, that was bad, but the fix is almost environmentally a worse situation than the creation of the harm in the first place. So it really does tie your board's hands in terms of how to be responsive and maintain the environment for the future generations. So in that regard, I think it would justify.
Some communities don't have a community growth boundary,
That can be fixed.
so we need to figure out how to remedy that as well.
It may be population centers,
Let's do
something
that.
like that.
Which includes community growth boundaries.
Took the language, yes, exactly.
Well, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate us having this in front of us so that we can move this forward. And if there's no further comment, I will open it up for the public. All right, and please raise your hand if you wish to speak on the Zoom room, or please approach the microphone if you wish to speak on this item in the boardroom. Okay, and seeing none, I think you've gotten the direction that you were looking for. I don't think we can move forward with a second reading with all those changes. So we will see the first reading of the ordinance again.
This does have to be at a regular meeting of your board, not a special meeting. So that will be
I would suspect September, was that 10th? No, that doesn't make sense.
The first meeting in September is, let's see.
14th.
It's not up there, it's the 14th.
14th.
Oh, certainly by then, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, there's no other regular meeting.
Right.
Do we need to make a motion to continue this at that certain time?
No, you can just tell me to make sure it's back to you in a timely manner and no later than September 14th.
Please.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, before you move on, staff has called to my attention a couple of glitches we're having today with Granicus. First of all, we're told that the feed has been in and out part of today. It's back on now, but there have been times it's off. And so with that in mind, I asked Matthew to post on the Zoom screen the YouTube location where if a viewer has had a temporary glitch in what they were viewing, they could go watch it in entirety at that YouTube location that's posted right there on the screen. And then secondly, if you look at your paper agenda, if you happen to have a paper version, there is no item 5.3 printed on it.
Oh.
But if you look at your agenda software, it is there. And then also if you look at the Granicus website electronic version, it is not there. So 5.3, the elusive 5.3 is an item brought forward by the Ag Department. And so I'm recommending that you reopen your consent agenda to clarify that you were not approving 5.3 because you just approved the whole row of numbers, and so it would be implied that there was a 5.3. And we've confirmed with Ag that that department can be carried, that item can be carried over to next week since there was some glitch in posting it.
Okay. I appreciate that. I had caught that, but I had forgotten to bring it up in the meeting today, so I appreciate staff bringing it to our attention. So what we need to do is negate the vote on the consent agenda and then re-vote with just 5.1 to 5.2 and 5.4 to 518.
Correct.
I think it's 518. And so if we can get that motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to reopen the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion from Supervisor Simon, second by Supervisor Crandall. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Yes.
Supervisor Scott, Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
And now looking for a new motion to approve the correct numbers that are on the agenda.
Do we need to open it all the way up and ask for public comment, or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and, any public comment? Thank you for that. Any public comment on, any public wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, let's bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda with the removal of item 5.3, so item 5.1 through 5.2, and then 5.4 through 5.18.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Simon, second by Supervisor Crandall. Roll call, please.
Okay, Supervisor Simon,
Yes.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Scott,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska,
Yes.
and Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thank you.
And thank you again to staff for bringing that to our attention.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to request this, but staff are telling me there may be another glitch of this nature. I'm just getting notified. Could we take a 5-minute break so I can go confer with staff and find out?
So it is
what the additional-
11:48. Let's restart at 11:55.
Thank you.